Hey guys, I wanted to go through the anatomy on a computer program pretty quick, just to give people kind of like a rundown of what's on the checklist that we're going to be looking at. I'm not going to try to go as in-depth as they do for lecture because, we've all sat through that and it goes on for at least an hour for each of these. So I'm just going to try to run through these checklists, really just marking what's on it. It's not a substitute for the cadavers by any means, but it's better than nothing and it gives you a pretty good understanding of the structures before you go into it. Okay, so starting with the thoracic checklist, we are starting with identifying thoracic vertebrae, which would just be this vertebrae back here, thoracic vertebrae. There are 8 thoracic vertebrae, by the way. The first thoracic vertebrae is going to start right here, and above that is still going to be cervical vertebrae. So additionally, we have the ribs, which, I don't really need to go through. You guys are smart. Next, we are going to have the sternum. You have the manubrium, the body of the sternum, and then the xiphoid process of the sternum. Up next on the checklist, we have the intercostal muscles. The fiber direction is going to be the giveaway on these for the most part. So we have external, internal, and innermost intercostals. And then we have the transverse thoracis and the subcostals as well. So I marked some sections here that I thought we could look at. This one right here, we have the internal intercostal muscles. And the way you can remember that is if you look at these fiber directions they're going, think of internal like going into you, like that, okay? So internal, going up like that. External, which I've marked the fiber directions right here, would be going down. So internal up like that, external down like that. And then additionally, you're going to have innermost intercostals, which look like they have kind of the same fiber directions, but that's beneath the internal intercostal muscles. Additionally, we have the transversus thoracis muscle. You have it on the right and the left. I just kind of faded the left ones here, but you can still see these right ones. So transversus thoracis, and they're going transverse, like almost horizontal. Additionally, we have subcostal muscles that you can see here. They are jumping a rib. So instead of going down one rib like that, they're jumping, like a 1 to 3 pattern instead of a 1 to 2 in that sense. From here, we have the innermost intercostal, and this might be how you're looking at it, by the way. Innermost, and you have your internal, and you see the fiber directions are still the same on the inside. They're going up like that. Just remember, internal, going up like that. Now, I circled this spot because in between the innermost intercostal and the internal intercostal, you can see an intercostal nerve coursing in between the 2 layers like that. And that's something else that we have to know are the intercostal nerves, which you can see here. Intercostal nerve. And that is, again, you can see there, and it's going to course along. Okay, so right here you have another intercostal nerve, and you can see it's going in that groove right about there. You can see my pointer at all, but right there is that another intercostal nerve going in like that. So I just cut the muscle away so you could see that. And lastly, we have 2 branches of the intercostal nerve that we have to be aware of. First one right here is going to be the cutaneous branch of the intercostal nerve. You can kind of see how that comes off. The intercostal nerve right there. And lastly, you're going to have the anterior cutaneous branch right here, if it'll let me click it. Yeah, the anterior cutaneous branch coming off like that. This shows it on the sternum. I'm pretty sure that's where they're all at. I don't know. Last thing, I did kind of put this box right here because in this box you can see the innermost intercostal like that. So we have, again, the internal, innermost, and then external. And you're able to cut away stuff. That's what I did so that you could see that there. Okay, now we're on to thoracic vessels that we have to look at. First thing on the list would be subclavian arteries and veins, which you can see right here. So subclavian artery, subclavian vein. I don't know why the things went away like that. Subclavian artery, subclavian vein. There you go. There you go. These 2 right here. Next up on the list would be internal thoracic arteries and veins, which you can see outlining where the sternum would be. So internal thoracic artery there. and internal thoracic vein right there. And if you had to, you could trace them back. So you can see the internal thoracic artery coming right back into the subclavian artery, and the internal thoracic vein going into the brachiocephalic right there. Next, we have to look at internal thoracic arteries and veins, and I've marked a few spots where you can see that pretty well. First is going to be this almost anterior view of them here. So if you look at this, and again, I faded this one out so it'd be easier to see, this internal thoracic vein, which is this right here, this is classified as the anterior intercostal vein. But another spot that you can see it would be if we look back here, you can see that VAN pattern that we talked about in lecture, the VAN, vein, artery, nerve. You can see on top we have the intercostal vein, on top of the intercostal artery, on top of the intercostal nerve. And I marked the same thing right here as well, the intercostal vein, artery, nerve going in that same pattern. And the last vessel we have to look at is the azygous vein, which you can see right here is the azygous vein. It's next to, you can see it's next to the abdominal aorta right there. And the significant part of the azygous vein is you can trace back these intercostal veins into the azygous vein. So I'm going to try to give you a kind of a full picture, as full as I can get for this. Navigating this is not fun or easy, but I think it's pretty helpful, for me at least. This next section is the superior and inferior thoracic aperture. So I just put what was on the handout right here. The superior thoracic aperture is demarcated by the first thoracic vertebrae, which we've got right there, and the first ribs, as well as the manubrium of the sternum. So that's the superior thoracic aperture. And the inferior thoracic aperture is going to be made up of the 12th thoracic vertebra, the 12th rib, which I misclicked, and I hit the diaphragm, which is part of it as well, and the xiphoid process. Okay, this one was a little trickier to tag, I guess, because the program gives a really weird view of this. Okay, so the parietal pleura is the outside membrane that is going to be attached to the inner surface of the thoracic cavity. And the visceral pleura is the delicate covering of the lung itself. So as far as here, this was really not fun to tag. You have the diaphragmatic part of the parietal pleura here, the mediastinal up here. So I'll tag that one again. Mediastinal part of the pleura, parietal pleura that is. Costal part of the parietal pleura. I really can't rotate this, it just wants to show me one view of it. And then lastly, the cervical pleura, part of the parietal as well. And then the visceral pleura, it's just the covering of the lung itself, it looks like. Okay, so focusing on the lungs themselves now, I think you can figure out on the list the apex and the base of the lung, as well as, what else does it say? The costal surface. The big parts is, we're looking right here is going to be the right lung. It's going to let me click it. Okay, so the right lung is going to have a transverse fissure and a oblique fissure. So the transverse is, another name for it was the horizontal fissure, and the oblique fissure is going up kind of like a V, like the oblique muscles. And on the left lung here, which is only going to have this oblique fissure, not a transverse fissure. Another unique thing about the left lung is it's got the cardiac notch in it where the heart would sit. Okay, this is a more, I just cut off one of the lobes of the right lung so we can look at the bronchi that you have to know. We have primary bronchi right there. You can see the lobar bronchus there and the segmental right there. So I'll just give kind of a better view. So primary bronchus, lobar bronchus, segmental bronchus. Okay, and lastly, we just have to look at blood supply here. So all that is tagged is the pulmonary veins and the arteries, which I think in lab they did emphasize just knowing on like the hilum itself of the lung. You're not going to have the heart attached to tell. Okay, so if you go here, we're going to hide this. Okay, so if you look, these two red things, you're going to have two pulmonary veins right there going into the heart, and then you're going to have a pulmonary artery. And the veins are carrying oxygenated blood. I think, don't quote me on this, they're the only oxygenated vein in the body. Okay, and one of those weird things to remember is the pulmonary veins, they're actually oxygenated despite vein being in the name. And then you can also see here, you've got pulmonary artery right there. That's the other thing that you have to know. But I think in the lab, you might just be given this hilum right here, which, you know, this right there is the lungs hilum, which is where you're going to be able to see like bronchi and all that go into it. You know what, let's see if I can cut some stuff away or hide some stuff, and we can just look at what it would look like on this program. Okay, so I kind of cut some stuff away from the hilum here, and you can just see the pulmonary artery on top in blue. You're going to see the bronchi, the main bronchi, going into the lobar bronchus like that. You know, the two sections of that, and then you're going to see the pulmonary veins like here. Again, this is software, like, don't count on this being the real thing. Just, like, go to the cadaver, look at the hilum, because a lot of the hearts are dissected away, so you're not going to be able to follow back the pulmonary arteries and veins to the heart. So just go and be familiar with which of the, because you're probably just going to be seeing, like, these almost like circular cuts, I guess. Go get familiar with what a vein and artery feels like, and then definitely know if it's hard on the inside, it's going to be the cartilage rings of the bronchi. All right, so that's the thoracic wall checklist. If you guys like this, let me know, and I will make more. So thank you.